This video is not suitable for all ages and should only be viewed by viewers 18 or older due to the nature of the content discussed and the discussion of sexual predators on the internet. Trigger warnings for the following: pedophilia, lolicon and child pornography, suicide, grooming, anti-Semitism and Nazi imagery, sexual harassment and sexual objectification, bestiality and zoophilia, and rape. Please do not harass anyone named in this video.
Hello viewers, welcome to another segment of Maybe the Internet Was a Big Fucking Mistake.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
On a more serious note, this video covers sexual gratification as well as general sexual harassment, and it's a very depressing story. If you're a kid who somehow got past the age restriction, please go away now. Just go. Now, I don't like covering these stories. We're an animation channel. We cover very important stuff like Disney and not Disney things sometimes. But I like to think of myself like the Jon Stewart of the YouTube animation community. I call things out when I feel like I can add something to the conversation. And it's important to talk about when YouTubers are misusing their platform, so what's the no fun situation? Because I hate it here.
I don't want to be alive anymore.
I have chosen not to keep this person anonymous because I believe this is not a mistake or a slip of the tongue. This is an active attempt of slander and misogyny, and that's just not acceptable. Also, this incident wasn't freely admitted to me. I had to have someone else tell me that this was going on, in a professional setting.
And he couldn't even tell me himself.
Chris was a team member roughly from 2014 to 2015. I know, I'm old. Chris was generally a nice guy in my time knowing him, but he exhibited weird behavior, like, you just draw this for your boss, right? If memory serves, there's also a nude version.
That's disgusting.
He was also my first trip to Everfree Northwest, the one we did the blog about. He's this guy here. The story is as follows. I'm not going to read it myself because it's going to make me sick, so I'm just going to have someone else read it.
At some point over the last few years, Chris told his story, allegedly several times, that in the bathroom of the hotel where the group was staying, he was masturbating to KP's clothing. Chris states that this is a lie, as he was actually constipated during the trip, and there were no witnesses to his masturbation story in or near the hotel room. We don't know the details about who the story was told to, besides the whistleblower who will remain anonymous, but it was likely Will Ryan, head of the YouTube channel DA Games, as Chris and Will are friends, as well as friends and or employees of that YouTube channel. Chris also started working for DA Games shortly after leaving the ILoveKimPossibleAlot production team, so the timelines track. Once KP was informed that this incident took place, she confronted him via text and an audio confession. The audio is linked in the description if you would like to listen to the whole thing yourself.
All right. Well, first, I think it's the obvious thing is one, just want to profusely apologize for that terrible fucking thing I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that, God, was an absolute horrible person so many years ago. And you didn't deserve that. So...
Right. So I have a couple of things. So my source says you told this story in front of Will and Sean and a couple other people. Is that correct?
That would probably be correct, yeah.
So Will has heard this story probably in passing a couple of times, correct?
Yeah, probably once.
Okay. Same with Sean?
Yeah, Sean.
Okay. Did you talk to Sean privately about anything else that happened when you were working on the team that I don't know about?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
Nothing I say is meant to excuse what I did, because it's inexcusable what I did.
Do you want me to say what the story was just for context, or do you want to explain it?
I mean, I guess it makes more sense if I do, because
Sure.
I don't think it's fair for you to have to reiterate that horrible thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so the old tale goes is that I pleasured myself in the hotel bathroom we were sharing during one of our breaks when everyone was gone and whatever, and that I fell off the John after basically getting lightheaded from what would be ejaculation falling on the floor where your dirty clothes also happen to be, and that my face planted on your underwear.
Right. And
Part of my PG version, I have a 6-year-old in the other room, so.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but thanks for being honest.
Chris, in his audio testimony, assured his other boss, YouTuber Saberspark, wasn't told this story. But it's unclear how truthful Chris is being when he says that. Chris also tries to steer the conversation to not include too much explicitly, stating that, quote, there is a baby in the other room, unquote. But that also might have been a ploy to lessen the harshness of the anger present. Regardless, since Chris says he was lying about the whole incident, it's difficult to take his word on anything due to this lie and the actions he took regarding it.
So once I was informed of this information and got Chris admitting to it, I sent that proof to Saberspark through mutual friends and to DA Games. After reaching out twice and waiting months for any private messages, I eventually received someone at DA Games in their totally real HR department that totally exists, even though I couldn't find any proof of it online. That's totally not run by Will's roommate, who's financially dependent on him. And for the record, I assumed Chris knew he was being recorded because it was a call about safety. It only gets worse from here.
I'm gonna need every last drop of this.
Let's bring a political comparison. For those who forgot or are not American, good for you. The 2016 leak of the Hollywood Access tape was a big deal. In a bus, we have an orange man who shall not be named, and Billy Bush, a member of the Bush family. He's a cousin of President George W. Bush, or as my Gen Z audience would know, the shoe guy.
Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
Orange Man was talking about women in an inappropriate way. Google it if you want to. This whole script is giving me a fucking headache.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet.
Now, even though this was in 2005 and leaked in 2016, and even though Billy Bush was now working for the Today Show and not Hollywood Access, where the tape was obtained, Bush was still fired on moral grounds, not contract obligations. It seems like keeping him on staff would be a bad look for the Today Show, despite this happening over 10 years ago. Imagine that. So I find this before his contract excuse to be weak at best. The ironic thing is, Bush was mostly going along with what was said. Chris actually did more than Bush did and suffered less consequences. As well, if Chris told the story multiple times, I would assume one of those times was after his contract was signed. But don't worry, Chris can still run for president. Just listen to how Bush described it affecting his family.
What was it like for you to go back home after the tape had been released, to face your daughters, your wife? What was that moment like for you?
Well, the initial moments were total chaos. The paparazzi were never interested in me before, and now they're outside the gate and ready to go. But once we settled and got to connect, there was a powerful moment. My now 16-year-old daughter called me, and she was in tears. And she was really upset, and I said, Mary, it's going to be okay, you know, don't worry. And she said, no. Why were you laughing at the things that he was saying on that bus? Why were you playing along with that? It wasn't funny. I said, Mary, I am sorry, and there is no good answer for that.
If you take another extreme example, do you guys remember the Michael Vick controversy? For those who don't know American football, player Michael Vick was caught running a dog fighting ring, you know, where they take poor little puppies and make them fight to the death for gambling purposes.
Why would you do that?
I'm pretty sure there's no clause in his football contract that says don't do that, but he was also fired on moral grounds. Imagine consequences for your actions. At the very least, let's assume the absolute best of the situation. Chris was being truthful, Saber and Will wasn't there to hear these conversations. This happened before he was hired somehow. I'm glad a whistleblower came forward, but even so, if this is how someone is talking about women, shouldn't you tell their future bosses? Does an employee talking about women in this unethical way make the company look bad? I mean, this isn't just a slip of the tongue, this is a purposeful attempt to objectify a woman due to bitterness and self-esteem issues, and should be taken seriously in any workplace, even a virtual one like YouTube. And the fact that DA Games and others value Chris's safety and privacy more than holding him accountable makes me worry, because this is harassment.
And I don't have to take it.
New developments. I posted part of the email exchange on Twitter again, and that blew up, I guess. DA Games released a statement due to public pressure. If not, then they would have released their statement a year ago when this email exchange took place. Chris is going away on work training. Can I have proof of that, please? Because you've already been pretty untruthful to me. I think you guys are just trying to wait until this all dies down and everyone forgets, and then Chris will just magically appear. Chris's statement also came out, which is really respectful. Calling me an employer.
Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
And then trying to make himself the victim. Chris, if you felt mistreated, this is the first I'm ever hearing about it. So politely talk to me directly or shut the fuck up.
You need to shut the fuck up!
I know we have this dude bro culture around YouTube entrepreneurs who have never been to business school before and don't know about good company ethics. As far as Chris, I would hope he gets an official investigation into his character from both parties, and as a lead with the Billy Bush example, possibly terminated. I don't know if Chris has personally changed or what his character is now, or if there are any other victims out there, but do you really want this kind of guy to be representing your company? To work in the media industry is a privilege. Why protect sexual harassers? Even if it's just a dumb internet job. And I know, this all sucks. Hearing this is probably gonna suck. Working on this video has sucked real bad. I've cried a lot. But it seems like that minors are in threat of being preyed on. Will himself has done some suspicious behavior, and it seems like nothing's going to change unless it's talked about in a bigger way.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
So that's why we're here. Part 0, Disproving KP Rep. For some reason, people think I'm unqualified to do this, or have false information about things that have happened in the past they are using to make a judgment on this case. And that's concerning. So let's go ahead and disprove some KP is bad stuff. For example, when this was trending on Reddit, I got comments like this. And if that's still not enough for you, listen to this.
And another aspect that I didn't really take into account until rather recently is that on top of all the work that the team members are having to do, there's something to be said for all the work that goes into managing those team members. I can't imagine it must be an easy job, because you have to make sure that everyone is on the same page with everything all the time. Everyone's keeping up to date with progress and is generally handing things in on time, all while trying to keep them happy and make them feel like they're in a positive working environment.
And at that point, I said, look, I'm sorry I couldn't finish it, but I need to get back to my other work. And KP, she let me go. She didn't force me to stay. She didn't say, oh, you have to keep working for me. She said, okay, you can go. Maybe I'll contact you again later when you're not busy.
Started a channel to spread her opinions and built a team around her. I've seen her make mistakes, take them to heart, and return improved. She is a leader, so she must lead in the way she knows, but she is always ready to listen, to help, and when she is unsure, seek advice herself.
In the wake of all of this, I had the privilege of meeting some of Team KP, to which my initial reaction was,
She still has a staff?
and it's true, a bunch of real sweethearts, who, in defiance of Twitter, reason, common sense, and
probable human resource statutes,
actually still love ILoveKimPossibleAlot. A lot.
And take my word for it, they were just as nonplussed about all this leaks business as anyone.
Actually, no, don't take my word for it. Why not go check out their page?
And get it from the various horses' mouths yourself.
Darling people.
The whole Anon KP leak situation is as follows. I do not regret making it because at the time I truly believed I was doing something for the better good. Michael, this is illegal.
Guard. Did you really think no one would check? What, do you work for iTunes? I guess never underestimate the power of too long didn't read.
Can I get paid now, Rachel?
For those playing at home, the TLDR is that this is utter nonsense! Especially this bit.
But KP, what about this?
She was exposed as a manipulator and a user. Somehow, she managed to get an entire team of people to get to work on her projects. Only they didn't get any compensation for it.
God forbid people have hobbies. I guess every Reanimated is just an anti-capitalism abomination. Discussed at length here.
I remember watching a video that she posted on YouTube a couple of years back. It was a long drawn-out video about how she was almost cancelled from the community and how she was a victim of stalking and her struggles with PTSD, which she brings up like every time she gets the opportunity. Like, what?
Shaming trauma victims probably wasn't your best move, my guy. Just saying.
She probably felt that because the fandom had died down a bit, nobody would go on the attack. She also had like a Twitter meltdown when she had to pay like for her own way into BronyCon. I think. I can't remember which convention because I didn't bother fact checking. Whereas other members of the Brunellis' committee, like Silverquill, got in for free. Really goes to show how much of a tight-knit group they all are when it comes to preaching about love and tolerance, like peace.
That's not what happened.
Wrong!
I was frustrated that BronyCon changed their minds about my guest spot based on false information, and they were informed it was false information from another convention head. It's very victim-blamey. More details here.
Which probably explains why people don't see her much after that with other committee members. All in all, KP just strikes me as just another individual who constantly acts like a spoiled child, who acts out when they can't get what they want.
This guy obviously doesn't know me because it's not really my character.
These types of individuals believe that everything should be like handed to them with little or no effort, simply because they are recognized in a group or community. I know it sounds like I'm saying like hashtag burn the witch, but my actual point is she's just another example of what happens when you let internet, or in this case horse fame, go to your head.
Why would we work so hard on dumb little horse videos if they weren't fun? Because art and media are definitely only made for attention. More details here. Make me your horse god.
I am your god now! Bring me your virgins!
This is a confrontation between someone who is supposed to be helping the team, but was actively leaking assets to the team and lying about it. And then they were caught. You can guess how this confrontation goes. But ladies and gentlemen, the day is Zain Minded. For more context, Zain, the head of the team at the time, is a pretty soft-spoken guy, so this is the maddest I've ever seen him.
Do you mind if we take it from here, me and
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, what the messages were a betrayal to the team that you claim to represent. I would say less so a betrayal to Rachel, still a betrayal though. But quite frankly, I'm insulted by what you chose to do. You sat there, you claimed to be representing the team, you claimed to be wanting to improve the team, and you sat there and you lied to our face, okay? Now, I'm fucking lost for words.
And the fact that I gave you...
What the fuck made you think that that was okay? Like, how did you think you were helping? What the fuck have you got to say for yourself?
And then even now, I gave you the chance to come clean and say, is there anything you want to say? And you didn't say anything. And you were denying it until I said, I have access, I see everything.
Initially, you can see that maybe your intentions were good, but there's absolutely no fucking denying the fact that by the end of that, not even by the end of it, halfway through at the very least, there was no denying that. That's my problem. You claimed that you were doing this for us, and yet you sat there and lied to us. You lied to me, you lied to every single person in that group. We sat there and we said, can we trust everyone in this group? And you sat there and said yes. You betrayed the team. Okay? You betrayed fucking me. Personally. I'm taking that personally. You sat there and you told them, Zain is about to upload that video. And what did you hope to achieve? It happened that I was preparing that video, and that's when I told you, by the way, we're putting it back up. We made that decision weeks ago. We made that decision when we posted it in the radio play chat. When people explained that we're not happy. We said, yes, we have a video ready. We'll upload it in a few weeks. That's why that video was going up. Did you ask me? No. Did you think that maybe a bit more, something better could come out of this if you fucking talked to us? Okay? Nothing good came out of that group. That Twitter. Nothing. You know what good came out of this? The Skype group. The group of people that sat down like grown men and fucking wrote down their complaints. Nothing good from that Skype chat. Do you want to know what everybody else on the team, the only 2 people that have said anything bad to the end on Twitter, are the 2 people in that group not on the current team. Do you know what everybody else has said to that Twitter? They fucking said, fuck off, because you're not helping. You are literally here to be malicious. You are here to tease Rachel. You are here to nag at her. There is no defending it. That Twitter is universally accepted not to have been a good thing. The entire team, while you were in that group, was saying that these guys are dicks. Nobody on the team supported them. And yet, here you are, claiming to represent the team and supporting them, and lying to the rest of the team while you do it.
Part 1, the original incident with Chris. Something I also wasn't aware of is that Will made a statement after his team member Boggs, you know, the one who was harassing me, was fired. It doesn't mention me, or that there was any victim, or even what he did was bad. Will even calls him a great person. So, starting off on a real high note there.
He is no longer a member of DA Games. He's still a very good friend of ours. Especially me. I will sometimes DM him. We'll be on Twitter, the big Twitter sometimes. But I'm not one for grudges. I don't do that. So don't think this was out of any bad, massive haste. Just a lot of back-end stuff that kind of conflicted with our channel. There's a lot of things that didn't meet our requirements. The videos started getting worse and worse, but it was more or less just, I was pressuring him a lot. There's a lot of things he had to do, and there just wasn't enough taking time except for the situation that we were going through. Come to mention it, there was a lot of things that maybe would have detrimented us in the long run if we would have kept this sort of conversation going. And I don't want to bring in logistics, because that's not a thing that should... I don't want you hating the dude, because he is a fantastic being. He just did a lot of wrong things, and we're all learning from him each and every...
Yeah, so I don't think there was any mistreatment, or I can't really explain why Chris would be so frustrated enough to do this. So I brought my friend James, who was on the team at the same time as Chris, to give some testimony.
Hi, I'm James. I used to work for KP, and I was the head editor of her first team. I worked for her for about 2 to 3 years, and I was asked to give a statement on Chris's work ethic on the team. Chris, in particular, was an extremely good editor, usually doing stuff the rest of the team couldn't do. But he was inconsistent with time. I'm coming out about Chris because in his recent statement, Chris claimed mistreatment by being on the team, but as someone who was there, it just seemed like he had unhealthy and alternative motivations, and it was clear that he would often say more than he could deliver.
Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
In particular, though, he often said more unsavory things, either just jokes to be funny, or what usually felt more personal. This was never a paying gig, so it seemed that he was upset that it wasn't helping his career, money, or even romantic situation. It usually felt like he would push himself to be really good and then fell flat. Like he had ulterior motives and scoffed at other editors for their work to make himself look better, really honing in. He was oddly fixated on if KP liked or approved his work, bragging, which again was inconsistent. In my opinion, he also seemed to have a crush on KP. It seemed obvious to me, if you know what I mean. Sometimes he antagonized another team member to get her attention, and also downplayed it when talking with others. It was odd that he would feel unappreciated when he was acting out of his own will to help. Though not fully joining the team, he still committed to projects. Near when he left, it would be a lot of, she doesn't pay us because she's too greedy. Specifically saying anti-Jewish semantics, such as fucking Jew won't pay us, or another, she's cheap, or she's the only one benefiting from this. But the reality is, no one ever got paid. Often in private conversations it would come up, but he wouldn't be shy about bringing it up during group conversations. And this is if he attended any meetings at all. We were a little intimidated by his status to bring this up to KP at the time, though. Chris ultimately left the team with almost no word. His work ethic dropped dramatically over the months we were all there. Overall, his experience was wanted, helpful, but inconsistent.
Part 1.5, Escalation to being unsafe with minors. If this video was just about Chris making up a gross story about me a while ago, I can see the argument for why bring this up now. But things end up extending to more actions that are questionable, and make it seem like these people can't really be trusted around children. We have a testimony of a minor who Chris made uncomfortable by mentioning bestiality to. Here's that story. She's chosen to be left anonymous for obvious reasons, but more about that in the interview.
Back in late 2018, I was in a voice chat with Chris, Will, and one other person who I cannot remember. They were another fan, so it isn't very relevant as to who they were. I was 14 at the time. I do not remember how the conversation got to this point, but at one point, Chris made a joke about me being into bestiality, specifically using the term bestiality, which I didn't understand at the time. I simply responded being confused about the joke, and Chris seemed to find that funny. My camera was on. They were using a third-party tool to have cameras with voice chats at the time, and I had met Will sometime before to voice chat in person. They had to have known I was underage. This by itself is not that awful, simply weird. But together with everything else that has happened and what these people have done, I think it's important to share as it shows a pattern of people in and around DA games creating an unsafe environment.
There was also an incident in LollyCon, or sexual images of cartoon characters that are children, and accidentally exposing that material to minors in Chris's private server. Allegedly to test a bot, LollyCon is already subjective in nature in the first place, as people can make the argument that these are fictional characters, and not real children, but I don't think anyone will argue that maybe we shouldn't be letting children see sexual imagery. The big problem with that, besides the incident happening in the first place, is that it was never officially addressed. No apology, no nothing. But instead the threads were deleted. Sounds kind of sus to me. Oh, it gets worse. Part 2, Will Ryan is a textbook pedo, and probably very unstable person. Sorry, yo. If that all isn't a big deal, then child grooming is bad, right?
Well, no shit.
So enter player 1 in this case, the YouTube channel DA Games. For those who aren't aware, DA Games is a YouTube channel that makes a variety of content, including Let's Plays, their own animation, and fandom-inspired music. The 4 main current members of the channel are Chris, Will Ryan, Cosmic Keyframe or Chrissy, and Sean Webby. Will himself is problematic for a bunch of reasons, not limited to dating a minor in 2015 when he was 23, and that's shady at best. Here are the screen caps. These are great. I guess you can be Jerry Seinfeld, who dated a 17-year-old when he was 38.
So, what are you gonna do later?
I got a date with Nikki.
Oh, yeah, she's a beauty.
And she's also 17.
Bold and beautiful.
I'll tell you the big advantage of dating a high schooler. If you're going out with someone your own age, you can't take advantage of them.
I suppose.
Oh, come on. That's a huge feature. Think about it. She's so young, she doesn't realize I'm a predator.
Jerry.
Yes?
I've been doing a lot of thinking.
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't think we should see each other anymore.
Oh, that's okay.
What?
No, it's fine. No problem. I'll meet somebody else. Sure. There are plenty of high schools in New York City. It's fine. Anyway, it's been really nice grooming you for a while. I'm gonna go scope out a Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, you too.
She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes.
Dating anyone 18 falls into a legally gray area depending on what state or country you're in. But the general rule of thumb is anyone 18 should not be dating anyone who's younger than 18. That's the internet law. I looked it up. Part 2.5 is grooming. But the most problematic of all of this is minors straight up being groomed in their public spaces. Who you'll hear from in a second was 15 years old when someone around 19 years old started sending them self-harm pictures. Censored screenshots are on screen. It's not a fun video, I warned you. Was pressured to help this individual and manipulated to break up with their current partner at the time. This escalated to nude photos and constant communication, until staged a suicide attempt and blamed then came back and faked memory loss until was blocked completely. And how was it handled in the DA Games server? Contacted Will about the situation, who sympathized privately but didn't do anything publicly. But, like, what's accountability for exposing minors to a predator? And just left the space on his own. eventually had to make his own Twitter thread with screenshots to prove the account was true. I mean, come the fuck on. The least you could have done was ban a pedophile. The bare minimum, what's that? Let me be clear. This isn't only Will's fault, it's everyone involved in the company, including the people I named before. And I know rent is a thing, but sacrificing putting children at risk because you don't want to publicly speak out about this behavior and threaten your livelihood, and because you don't want to go to college, is just shitty and selfish.
Oh, you are just the worst type of person.
Next is and his friend Pixel talking about problematic behavior in the DA games community and the situation at large. Welcome to the No Fun interview section. I have two people with me who have previous personal or professional experiences with DA games in the past, and they made a document about it a year ago, but I brought them on to share their personal stories in audio form, so it's a bit easier to digest, as well as to provide some context to these things and that these are real people, I promise. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll go first. I was a fan since 2018 until I became friends with Will, one of the DA Games owners. In, I want to say 2020, 2021, I'm not sure. I was commissioned by him in late 2022 to make a concert outfit, but that's really all I got. Well, that's all I have when it comes to my relation to him. We were friends, but not really.
So you had a professional relationship with Will?
Yeah, I was commissioned once, but that's about it.
Okay, so Pixel, what's your background?
So I was a fan in 2018 to 2023, and I was a fan artist in a server. I did a lot of general fan art and just general art interpretations of his stuff, and I never worked with him like professionally, but I was friends with him during 2023, and we DM'd pretty often for a couple months. Like, we talked in VCs and stuff.
How did that start? Did he notice your fan art and start DMing you, or what?
It was kind of interesting. He was friends with first, and other than a DA game server, there was another friend server that he was in, and at some point the topic of me came up when he was DMing, and he noticed that I wasn't on his friends list, and he was just kind of confused about that. And so it was just kind of, he thought we were friends already, and so it was around early 2023 that I accepted his friend request, and we started DMing from there. I think we officially started a conversation after an incident with his friend Inu. She was like harassing me for like 2 hours, and I had that conversation with Will. I was like, your friend is doing this, and this is what happened, and here's the conversation that we had. And after that, we just started having normal conversations.
So I guess Will does this where he'll just take people from the fan server and try to build a personal connection?
Yeah. So there's actually this second server that a lot of his friends, including like Lala and Inu, are in. That sometimes just some people get invited to, I guess.
Okay, I guess from what I'm getting at so far is there seems to be a lack of boundaries. Not that it's a bad thing to make friends with fans or anything, but I feel like it's almost competitive if you have like a server of people he likes that are also in the fan server.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, so what happened for me was I was friends with Lala before I was invited to that server. So because I had a mutual friend with Will, meaning Lala, I was invited there. It's officially Lala's server, but it mostly gets used for Will stuff.
What exactly is in the server? Is it just like personal jokes or a similar layout to the other server, but just kind of private?
It's supposed to be a friend group server, but it's really centered around Will.
Yeah, they had this rule where if you weren't active enough, you'll get kicked. And if you couldn't go to VCs, you would have to explain yourself, like, oh, I couldn't join VC today because of X, Y, and Z. And generally, from my experience, a lot of people had to cater to Will, like going back on joining the server in general. They used to let people in pretty generally, but then they just kind of restricted access.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason I got in there was because she actually invited me in there. A few times she actually gave out invites, but it's technically a friend server, but they have, like, not official events, but they do VC a lot. Sometimes for, like, days, and they just generally expect you to be active a lot.
So it seems to me like the whole point of the server is for Will to talk to people and get validation. Is that it?
Yeah, definitely. I remember this one time that me and a friend who was in there were watching, I think it was Hellraiser 4. It was one of the worst Hellraiser movies. We were, like, cracking jokes and stuff. And, like, an hour in, Will joined and he got upset because we were talking over the movie when he didn't even choose to watch it. We did.
Were there any minors in the server?
Yes.
Yeah, there were.
I'm not gonna say names, but I remember there being like several, at least.
So I guess it's kind of questionable that he made a separate server to invite mostly fans of his main server, which I guess isn't the worst thing in the world, obviously. But it's things like the boundaries that are weird, the rules as far as VCing that are weird, and the fact that there are minors in there. Were there inappropriate jokes and stuff like that?
Yeah, there used to be an NSFW chat even, and like people would just share their kinks in there and stuff. I remember this. It got deleted eventually, but it was weird. Like, the time I was in there and the chat still existed, I was a minor at the time, I think. I don't remember exactly, I'm sorry, but yeah, it was really sexual and racist and stuff.
Okay, not off to a good start. So that seems to be the running theme with DA games in general, that they're being inappropriate with minors. They make inappropriate or not safe for work jokes in front of minors, and no one seems to be willing to do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sometimes they, like, for forever now, I want to say, they refuse to even acknowledge that there are minors in their audience.
Yeah, I remember that. When the first version of Doc dropped, we were bringing up the point that he was trauma dumping to minors and talking about things that younger kids shouldn't be hearing, and he relies a lot on his fan base for personal support. There's an entire channel in that server dedicated to just giving him specifically support, and the entire move to the server is dedicated by how he's feeling that day. And when we mentioned that in our document, like, hey, he's trauma dumping, he's talking about all these horrible things without a filter to these people. Yeah. And people were giving the excuse, well, they're older teens, they're like this age. When in reality, the age range was a lot broader than like 16, 17. They were 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds in there. The broader range is like from 13 to early 20s in that server, and it's unfair to assume that just because it appears that people are older, that you should trauma dump to these people. They did have an NSFW channel in that main server, but I wasn't around when it was a thing.
And what year was this about?
I'm not entirely sure. I remember being there when that channel got deleted, I think.
When did you guys join the server?
I joined the server in May 2018, and it was around then.
I joined in December.
I don't know how long it was around. Like, the server has existed since 2016, but it may have been around since the beginning. I'm not sure, but it was around in 2018, that's for sure.
And another thing I wanted to bring up is that the moderators do not go through formal training, from what I could tell. I was there and he just picked someone and he was like, oh, you should be a moderator now. You've been a friend for long enough. And like I said, he's hired minor moderators. The most recent one just turned 18 last year. They graduated high school last year and they were a moderator the entire time in the server from 2018 to 2023. And I'm 20 now, so they were younger than me that entire time. And as far as I'm aware, I heard they were recommended to someone.
No, they got picked randomly. They got picked randomly. Okay. I remember this. Yeah, it was weird. They just got picked for no reason. And they even told me several times in DMs when they were a moderator, like, you should have been it, not me. Because, I don't know, they thought of themselves as not being capable enough to be a moderator, but they still were anyway.
Yeah, I can get the point of having moderators being subjective, but at the very least they should not be minors. They should also know it's actual work, and should be okay with whatever work they get. Usually mods are like, hey minor, don't go in the 18 plus chat, or have a question, we'll help you, just like that.
Exactly.
So was the minor activity in both servers the only thing that gave off red flags, or was there any other behavior?
Oh, there's way more. I remember, in the DA games community, there was a lot of, predators, like groomers and such, and they got exposed, like, monthly sometimes. Like, every other month there would be another one, and they would never get acknowledged by the team. And it was just horrible. This is gonna get very personal real quick, but at some point I was groomed by someone in there, and I exposed them, like, 2 years ago. And I posted it in the server I made a Twitter thread, and I posted it in there. Well, I asked my friend to post it, because I didn't want to do it myself, because I was a public figure at the time in the DGAMS community. And it got deleted like instantly because it was just drama tarnishing the brand. And
So to summarize, it's not abnormal for predators to be attracted to online spaces that maybe make fandom content, but it's kind of scary when the mod team is burying it.
One of them literally got arrested for having CP in their possession.
Yeah, there's this one guy that got arrested for like 34 accounts of child like 3 years ago, and they never got acknowledged by the team either.
And he was pretty prominent in the server. He would make animations and stuff.
He was really popular.
And he was kicked once that came out at the very least, right?
We don't know. We don't know.
There's a probability he probably was, but they do have a thing where, like, if you suspect someone being weird, they will investigate and kick them, but...
It's done very badly. It's done really badly. Like, from personal experience, it's so bad. Like, I tried to come forward about my groomer, like, way before I posted about it. And they were like, hey, do you have proof of this? And I was like, no, I deleted those chats because I don't want to see that shit. And they were like, okay, you can get him back. And I was like, okay, how? Could fucking help me? Because I was panicking. And they were like, figure it out yourself. So you're going to tell a child in a panic state to just figure it out themselves, or else we're not, or otherwise we're not going to do anything. It's really weird. I don't know. I'm getting heated. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just so fucking dumb to me that they don't do the bare minimum, or just like don't have a server that's open to minors.
It reminds me of last year when he was doing a set list for MomoCon, and he has these killer robots, and he was going to describe in detail how they kill people, and I was asking, like, well, shouldn't you put a content warning on there? Since most people are like coming for the DA games stuff. And he laughed at me. He was like, no, why should I do that? I have a song called Mr. Dirty Balls playing. People should know that we're not for kids because that song is playing. And literally the next day, he had to add a content warning anyway. So I just kind of like threw up my hands like, okay, you had to add one anyway, so why were you throwing a fit about it?
Yeah. He gets upset at like the smallest things ever, and it's so annoying. So it's really hard to like come forward about bigger stuff too.
Were any of the other team members supportive when you came forward? Because my understanding is that when you go to Will for stuff, he kind of brushes it off.
Well, he either brushes it off, or he sends HR. The person that's currently HR, usually will just go into your DMs and just be like, yo, don't bring negative stuff to Will, he cannot handle it right now, and he never handles it, so it's frustrating as hell.
And they just made them HR this year.
Is the HR person a public figure?
Not anymore. They did have a Twitter account, but one of the gripes I have is that as an HR person, they live with him. They're friends with everyone in there, so when it comes to certain situations like yours, technically they should not be handling that because they are not a neutral third party.
Does she have like a social presence? Like, is she known for being friends with Will?
Yes, to some degree. Like, to some degree, she's public. When you go into DAM's live stream, she will be there as a moderator. Things such like that.
It seems like the running theme is Will can't handle whatever the conflict is because he can't address it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so let's talk about some troublesome behavior you saw from Will. I know he dated a minor in 2015, and there was a lot of N slurs and a lot of anti-Semitic slurs. Great stuff. Do you have any antidotes or things to share on top of that?
Just recently, someone did some more digging when they found out on a live stream clip. I was looking at some site called like YoungPorn or YoungPeoplePorn.com, and they did some more digging on the Wayback Machine.
What drove you to make this document? Was it the Predator thing? Like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, and you just were like, fuck it, we need to write all this stuff down?
I think it was just generally, we were frustrated about a lot of things. We talked to each other, and then we found about the NSFW stuff. And we decided, nope, this needs to get out there.
That's pretty much how it went. We stumbled across it as well. We were literally just messing around, and that's when we found it. And thought, well, this doesn't look right. And we did some digging, and we were like, this isn't right at all.
So you went back through Will's history and saw the anti-Semitism, and there's one point where he justifies using the N-word as a white person. And I thought that was really sad. So what was the response when he released his first version of the document?
Well, the first version came out, like, really weird. Like, we tried to get, like, fans to see it, so we made a fan account, and then, like, turn it into the release account. It was stupid. That one went really bad. Like, so you can say more about that. Like, it affected you mostly.
Yeah, it just went really badly. We were still friends at that point, and we were just, like, really heartbroken, so the doc was very emotionally charged, and it just had stuff in there that didn't really need to be in there. And then also after he came out trending on Twitter, like 2 mods, one of them was this HR person, came to me and they put me in like a group chat and they told me, you have to fix this. And I'm like, I'm in a college class, I can't fix this right now. But I still had to do this anyway. And after a couple more screenshots came out, the HR person was like, is there anything else that's going on? Because if there is, I'm one step away from flipping switches and ruining lives. And I was really scared at that point. And rightfully kicked me from the friend group because I was so scared of what was going to happen to them. I just ended up throwing them under the bus because I was so scared and under pressure.
Like, we changed the password for the Twitter account and everything because we could not have this go south.
Yeah, and when the second document came out, I reached out again and I was basically confirmed that was what happened. And I put out my secondary statement on Twitter because the initial apology, well, the quote-unquote apology that I made the first time, it went through those 2 people and it was heavily sanitized. They wanted me to say he apologized in BC, he did this, he did that, and I was supposedly there to witness when he did those things, and as a result, people started disregarding everything as fake, and so I wanted to make that secondary statement to explain that nothing was fake, and I was pressured into writing something I didn't really believe in. And then later those 2 people would come forward in private and apologize to me for doing that.
So let me get this straight, guys. So 2 official DA Games ambassadors, mods, whatever you want to call them, basically tried to legally threaten you to formally apologize or else waggy finger. Is that basically what happened?
Pretty much. This HR person, she bragged about being a former Kiwi farmer and like digging stuff up about people. So I knew she had a capacity to do those types of things. Those people on those sites do. And I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to me and the other people who were working there.
Yeah, I was especially scared. I was especially scared because they will commission me. Like, what if they save the packaging, I send his outfit in, and have my address? Like, I was scared as fuck. So I logged you out because I could not have that happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what happened after you released the second doc? Did anyone come after you or try to have you reprimanded?
There was this, it was really weird. Like, this time it went okay. Like, we posted it on, like, the Reddit and stuff. And it actually got some reaction, which was really cool. But there was also this one person that either was the HR person or someone pretending to be the HR person. We still haven't figured it out because the HR person has a habit of stalking me specifically. And they threatened to, they acted like they were going to sue me.
Yeah, I remember that. It was just horrible. Another thing is the second doc, it just kind of inspired someone to go through the server logs. And they found that people like Chris were going through and deleting all the racist stuff that they said. And they found videos. And they made like a whole archive just going back. That they were like just going back and deleting things.
So Chris got caught being racist and sexist just in general?
Yeah, pretty much.
So before I move on to the last question, can you guys give some context, as much as you can, from the anonymous Chris story that you interviewed the victim for?
So that's actually my best friend who told an anonymous story. So this had to do with her username, which had the word animal in it, and then her name. And so it actually came from that. Like, it was weird. Why did they say that? Why did they think it was appropriate to say that to a 14-year-old they knew was 14?
What took me off guard is that the 14-year-old had met Will before. Was that at a convention?
Yes, it was at a convention.
Okay, cool. At least that's purple.
They're also pretty prominent as a person in the community, so it would be weird if they didn't know how old she was.
Is she still prominent?
No, she got banned, and now she fucking hates their guts, so...
So the whole team has a controlling presence with their fan base and on social media, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So my last question is, unless you guys wanted to add anything else as far as any general stories or experiences or anything.
So as I mentioned before, I was a fan artist, and at the beginning of Iris, I would make interpretations of characters, and Will would go on the chat and say, These interpretations give me anxiety because now I'm scared they're not going to be able to live up to these expectations.
Let me backtrack. What is Iris? Is that a song they've done? I'm not familiar with their content, really.
It's one of his IPs.
Yeah, it's an original story.
Yeah, it's a dystopia thing. There's a lot of characters, but not a lot of them have designs. So, what a lot of people like myself did was like, let's make a design on this character based on this very vague description that he had. And people would also make covers of songs too, and he'd get high amounts of anxiety over it. And in some cases, he'd call it defacing. I got caught out for the way I drew Ninja's Killer Robots, because he was like, well, now you made my design look like horseshit, even though I heard no one else complaining about his design or anything like that. And then on top of that, a bunch of other artists started apologizing, like, yeah, we're so sorry, we didn't know us drawing this stuff upset you so much, and you never said anything until now. And he made it a rule in the server for a while that you couldn't post interpretations, or you couldn't post covers with more than one instrument or more than one vocal track. And he just now changed that rule. I heard from someone that's still in there that he just changed the rule back to where it was before, so you can do that again.
I can't get over that because that's the stupidest fucking thing. He should be happy that people are making fan art because they enjoy the thing. It's like he's punishing his fans.
Yeah, even on Twitter, someone was asking about it. He's like, well, I'll go forward in making more character designs when I'm sure that they won't be tampered with. And just a lot of extreme words for stuff that wasn't extreme. Being a young artist at the time, I was 16, and that was devastating to me. And when I was telling him, this really hurt when you said that, he was like, well, don't have a cow, it's not that bad. Without really acknowledging how I felt or how any of these other people felt about that.
That's a problem he generally has, like, when someone comes forward to him about how he hurt their feelings, it's like, yeah, but it's not that bad, like, bro, you hurt someone, it's not cool, man.
Oh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. I mean, the predator shit and the child porn is probably the worst of it. Okay, to recap, so I was going to say it sounds like it's pretty bad between the allowing predators to be in their spaces and not really doing anything about it, or threatening people who make fan art, or Will dating a minor, and Will looking up child porn. I remember seeing that because I thought that was the worst thing Will specifically had done, and then Chris just had the behavior of being sexist and racist too, and gross with minors. So what would you guys like to gain from coming forward on a bigger platform and speaking about your stories?
So my original goal would be, like, acknowledgement of this stuff happening, but, like, I don't think that's gonna happen, like, ever, being realistic. I don't know exactly what I want anymore, like, I just want this stuff out there, I guess. That's all I can do.
What I personally think is Will needs to take a break from the internet, because this sounds really unhealthy from a third-party perspective.
I'm just gonna sound... This is gonna sound really mean, but I don't think he's capable of taking a break from the internet. I mean, he went on a camping trip with his family, and he was on his phone and was in voice calls the entire time. So even then, when he was supposed to be out in nature, he wasn't taking a break. There was multiple times he said he'd leave Twitter, and then he never did. I believe someone caught him lurking because he was pretending to be off of Twitter, but then, like, he retweets something and then quickly unretweet it. He's on Instagram mostly now, and even now he's pretending to, like, be offline on Discord.
Something I've noticed too is that people who enable him are dependent on him, like the HR person who's a roommate of his, and is dependent on the channel's income in order to live.
Yeah, exactly, like, the HR person lives with him and doesn't have a job outside of HR for DA games. I think we don't know, because they're not a public figure, we don't have any connection to them anymore, but I think the only thing they do in their life is sit in Will's house and send out angry emails to us.
This is what the kids call an allegation, something we don't know if it's true, but it's based on a theory and evidence.
Yeah, she used to have a job, like, as a childcare worker, but she stopped. And then she did, like, art commission, and then she did, like, art commissions for a while, but then she, like, fucked up her wrist. So, I don't know what she can do if she has a job.
Sounds like a healthy work environment. So the only time they acknowledge anything wrong is when I retweeted one of the emails a couple of weeks before this recording, and they were like, Chris is taking a break. Chris is taking hiatus, which I think means we're going to wait until this blows over because we're not going to show you any proof that Chris went to any HR training.
I'm going to go out on a limb and allege that he did not go through any training. Like I said, the HR person was only made HR this year. DA is only 4 people. Even emailing and doing the NDA was against the ACAS guidelines. So I don't know what training he would have done if there was any. I think we had a timeline down. Like a day or so after your tweet came out, he left Twitter the day after. He was streaming the night after, and a day or two afterwards, he was saying, I got trained. Like, at what point during that timeline would he be getting trained?
Yeah, and keep in mind, for those who don't remember, I had the original conversation with HR a year ago. And I was feeling antsy because I wanted to make a video for a while, and we were waiting for the right time, and then this blew up, and I'm like, this would have been great a year ago. But ideally, it doesn't sound like the team is even safe to make content because of their influence around others. Like, Will himself dated a 17-year-old when, how old was Will?
22 to 23.
Ugh, great. So when you date a 17-year-old, regardless of when it happened, you should know better. Like Chris telling the story, regardless of when it happened, he should know better. So I guess we'll hope for the best. I think at the very least, if there's going to be any changes, they have to show proof and a plan, or else no one's going to believe them at this point, I think. A public apology is probably a good start.
Yeah, that's like the big thing. Like, you would think that nobody would believe what DA are saying, but they do, and it's weird. Like, even when you show them proof, they're like, no, it's fake, you're just haters. Like, their fan base is very, their fan base is, like, very, they just really want to believe that they're good people when they're not, because Lord knows why, actually.
It's because he built up a parasocial relationship with them.
True.
Even with the lolly thing, when we told people about that, they were so like, well, actually he was using it to test a bot, and I'm like, well, why is it still there? And it wasn't even in the same server. Again, the fans have a very parasocial relationship. You have this mature 20-something-year-old telling you all his deepest secrets and stuff, and all his childhood traumas, and you feel closer to him. And on top of that, you have this whole Discord channel dedicated to just giving him support. You're encouraged to look at his Discord status and see what state he's in. When I was younger, he'd even go as far as to like delete his Twitter account and like threatening to delete the YouTube account because he was feeling bad. And when you're put through that over and over again, you want to feel close. You want to feel like this person can't be bad. I did all this for him. I went through all this for him. And I'm just sorry. I'm getting really a bit heated here because, again, I went through all of that, and it's such an emotional, draining thing to go through. It's like, no, you shouldn't be doing this to 13 to 18-year-olds. You shouldn't be telling them all these things. Like, I'm going to delete my YouTube channel where, you know, when I was bullied, I got my head bashed in.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the worst example I remember is, I think, that he said in his Discord server that he was going to kill himself because his fans were so fucking annoying. I don't have proof of this, sadly. I remember seeing it.
He posted a suicide note on Twitter.
Right, several times.
And then Chloe had to come out and say, no guys, he's fine. And then he just he never deleted it afterwards.
And he didn't kill himself, he's okay.
He posted several times, while he was in a hospital as well.
Yeah, I remember this happening when I just was a fan. When 2018, 2019, this was happening a lot. And, I felt super close to him when I literally just knew him for, 4 months. It was weird, I felt this super close connection to him, and now I understand why, and it's so fucking awful.
On that note, do you guys have any advice for people that are kind of in similar shoes that you were when you were finding all this stuff out?
Talk to people. You're not alone going through this. Please talk to people. Even people that are still fans, talk to them. And it's okay if you don't feel okay going through this, because it's fucking hard. Having to sever a connection that feels so close and personal to someone who turns out to be a terrible person. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel sad for the things you lose. It's okay. You're gonna be fine. Talk to people.
Yeah, I agree that wholeheartedly. Just talk to people. One of the driving factors that led me to become friends with again is that I talked to someone about everything that happened, and I suggest to talk to people who are outside of the server, go to different servers, and just know that this is not how things are supposed to be. I talked to a friend who had nothing to do with DA or anything, and they were like, that's not normal. That's not something that should be happening on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. Therapy's good, guys. Alright, well, I guess on that note we can end. Thanks everyone for being here and telling your stories. It sounds like a hot mess.
It is. Like, it's so messy right now. Like, on the DA Games subreddit, currently they're, like, censoring words. You cannot say the number 11 anymore. Shit like that. It's stupid.
And if you try to post anything without context, I was trying to post context of what was going on earlier, and they just deleted it immediately.
Yeah, they nuke it instantly. Like, I got banned from the Reddit.
As someone who took a media literacy course, this is not how you deal with backlash. You apologize, but it's kind of hard to recover when you have minors and predators in the same space and you haven't really done anything about it. These are really serious issues that aren't like a oopsie, so...
No, they're dealing with it so badly, like, it's embarrassing for them.
I know, I heard through a mutual friend that they originally weren't going to say anything because they didn't see a reason for it. They were like, oh, there's no reason for it, it's going to go away.
Alright, thanks everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you.
So there's 3 players in this Shakespearean tragedy. Chris, a former member of my production team who made up this gross story about me. His first boss, DA Games, a YouTube channel run by Will Ryan. And his second boss, another YouTuber named Saberspark. Misc, Will's Nazi, racist, and anti-Semitic memes. There's also, racist and anti-Semitic memes. It never ends here. Part 3, how DA Games handled the Chris situation. Badly. Back to the Chris situation, the DA Games team first responded to the situation privately in November of 2023, citing the issue had been resolved to their own satisfaction, and that Chris didn't work for them at that time, even though there's proof that suggests otherwise, and that Will Ryan was likely in the room to hear the story recounted at least once. They continue to lie about my legal rights, and basically put pressure on me to stay quiet about everything. We'll show you those emails in a second. At a last-ditch attempt, DA Games attempted to send me a cease and desist. So we're going to go through some highlights of the emails here, but feel free to pause the video and read them for any context that you'd like. Hi Matilda, I was told to contact you regarding the Aficionados Chris case.
Many months later.
Hi Matilda and the DA Games team. It's been 3 months since I last reached out, and I'm disappointed in the lack of urgency. I'm reaching out one last time to discuss the issue and solve it privately.
Hi KP. Thanks for your patience. Chris informed us that the recording between you and him was not consensual. Nonetheless, we listened to the recording ourselves and have determined that the two of you had already reached a resolution. You will allow the actions of the past to be forgotten and forgiven. It is also our understanding that all of this took place before Chris was an employee of DA, meaning that he was not under contract at the time of the incident. Therefore, as a company, we do not have the jurisdiction to punish him in this situation, as he has not breached contract.
I'm disappointed with the lack of action taken regarding these issues and your lack of alarm in terms of how it reflects upon your company's priorities, values, and internal culture. Also, regarding the recording and Chris's statement, fact is, whether or not Chris engaged in the activity, he openly spoke about doing it allegedly in calls involving his co-workers post having his position within the company and after, as late as 2019. This is highly inappropriate, morally unacceptable language to use when conducting oneself around coworkers, much less when it's an attempt to convey approval from peers and a superior by presenting himself as a sexual harasser. If he was bragging about sexual misconduct involving a minor, would that change your response? Because if the answer is yes, you should be taking this seriously because sexual harassment is sexual harassment. By continuing to employ Chris, you not only condone his behavior, but actively encourage it within your workplace-related settings. At this point, it's a matter of safety for myself and members of our communities, and me attempting to handle this issue privately is a courtesy, one that seemingly is not being honored, and in fact, dismissed. If no satisfactory result is brought about, I have no problems going public.
We will review this case again and decide on appropriate disciplinary action. This will be handled internally and confidentially, of course. We would like to state that we do not represent Chris in any legal capacity. DA Games as a company does not tolerate threats of defamation or libel. If you go public, we have the right to pursue legal action. We will share the results of the investigation with KP, but only on the condition that she signs a confidentiality agreement.
Part 4. How Saberspark handled the Chris situation. Badly. Next is YouTuber Saberspark, who primarily makes animated themed content and generally seems not to care about the situation unless he's listed as an employer of Chris. I originally contacted Saber through his staff, and here are the Discord messages to prove that. I hate it here. There were talks of a hiring change, and I assumed Chris was terminated from working with Steven due to that. Cool. One less thing to worry about. Then it got worse. Turns out, Nothing happened. Cool.
Oh, there's a big surprise!
I tried following up, but never heard anything. Cut to November of this year, where Steven is mentioned in that email asking for an NDA to look into the Chris issue. This eventually escalated into a public spectacle when I shared the NDA email on Twitter. One of the people in that thread tagged Steven directly, and then, thanks for the support, guys. It's emotionally draining, but I feel like being critical of online spaces, especially when you try to solve things privately first, is important.
Were you able to contact Saber or anyone that currently works for him about Chris?
I contacted Saber through some friends in common, never heard about an official firing though.
I was never contacted by any friend of yours, nor did you ever make any attempt to reach out to me on your own behalf, via Twitter, email, or anywhere else. You are omitting so much information right now, but I'll provide some here in a sec under your original post.
Dude, we can talk privately. I have screenshots that I contacted both and.
Are you going to record the call without telling me the same way you did to Chris, too?
Talk to me privately. I'm not doing this back and forth on Twitter.
Then don't at me with your half-truths and omitted information in order to gain sympathy and slander my name. I'm 100% to debunk every accusation in your video. I have no idea how you can claim due diligence when you never reached out to me.
Don't fucking talk to me like that. Don't call me a fucking liar when I have the screenshots to back me up. And if you're aware of the call, then the information got back to you regardless. If there was some decision made, I never heard about it. I'm ending this conversation. So a couple of things to unpack here besides me not purposely tagging Steven. It was a third party. Regardless, Steven proceeded to call me a liar publicly.
You calling me a liar?
I ain't calling you a truther.
Proceeded to tease me about doing an unsolicited recording and to slander him.
Slander is spoken. In print, it's libel.
Some red flags to this response. 1. Steven could have calmly asked who I talked to instead of assuming the worst. 2. His anger was directed at me and not an employer, Chris himself. 3. Steven is claiming that I never contacted him directly, implying that he had no information about this, but admits to knowing the confrontation with Chris was recorded.
Sound like some bullshit to me.
By the way, I wasn't going to make fun of Steven so much, but I gave him so many chances to communicate with me, and he just didn't do anything, so clearly he doesn't care what I have to say. It's only an issue when there's potential backlash.
I've come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog is a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife. That's right. He said his dick was this big, and I said, that's disgusting. So I'm making a call-out post on my Twitter.com. Shadow the Hedgehog, you got a small fucking dick. It's the size of this walnut, but way fucking smaller. And guess what? Here's what my dong looks like. That's right, baby! All points! No quills! No pillows! Look at that! It looks like 2 balls and a bong! He fucked my wife! Guess what? I'm gonna fuck the earth! That's right! That's what you get! My super laser piss! Except I'm not gonna piss on the earth! I'm going higher! I'm gonna piss on the moon! How do you like that, oh bomber? You have 23 hours before the piss droplets fall on the earth! Now get out of my fucking sight before I piss on you too!
So what I think happened is that Steven was informed by Pim, didn't know it came from me, discussed it, blew it off or decided it was nothing, and forgot about it until he started facing some public backlash, and proceeded to blame me. Because he was so concerned with direct communication, I ended up sending him this email detailing who I talked to, why this is important, and why this isn't a single incident. Good afternoon, Steven. This email is your requested private communication regarding Chris and the overall sexual harassment situation that he has caused. Our full incident report can be found here if needed. Since you publicly displayed confusion at best about my attempted communication with you prior to this point, below are screenshots of my conversations with aka the friends/employees I passed Chris's information to. The conversation with specifically mentions a possible staffing change based on Chris's actions, and I honestly cannot fathom a situation where there would be that drastic of an employee change or discussion without your knowledge. Screenshots can be found here, here, and here. I do not appreciate you calling me a liar publicly, and I would like some form of public apology. He didn't give me one. Additionally, your public statement states that you knew the confrontation between me and Chris was recorded as a matter of community safety. Combined with your email interactions with EA Games lead me to believe that, unless there was some major miscommunication, you were aware of the situation and you have chosen inaction. You still have the choice to either hold Chris accountable, i.e. firing him with proof, or keep him on staff. Should you choose the former, please communicate this to me as soon as possible to avoid any miscommunication in any public statement/information present after. If you believe this is a one-time incident, this document linked below has logged some of Chris's other inappropriate behavior, including but not limited to making bestiality jokes to someone he knew as a minor, and the use of the N-word and Nazi imagery with himself and Will of DA Games. You can find more information on page 4 and 29 of this document. I have been clearance to show unedited screenshots of the bestiality incident if requested. I hope that we can clearly communicate about this going forward. I have no desire to get into an internet squabble with you, so let's please work this out like adults. And do you know what happened? No response to the email, but suddenly the Twitter exchange got deleted? Where did it go? Nowhere to be found. No apology, no clarification, just deleted the evidence that he knew about the situation and covered his tracks and enabled the weird dude because God forbid Steven have to find a new editor or even do the public apology that I asked him to when he falsely threw me under the bus. I believe Steven realized I wasn't lying, and instead of talking to me directly or apologizing to me, he just deleted the thread. So, if Steven wasn't hiding anything or wasn't sus, why didn't he just ask me about the Chris stuff? He just assumed automatically that I was lying and started yelling. Very defensive. Very sus. What exactly was the move here, Steven? Do you think just deleting the thread, putting your fingers in your ears and going la 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 would make this all go away? More of the story is to fire creepy people on your staff even if it's inconvenient to you. Steven, it is clear to me that you do not wish to correspond with any direct communication despite you personally requesting so. To say I'm disappointed with your behavior would be a severe understatement. You called me a liar publicly without even asking for the truth or further clarification. To me, it seems like the only reason why you wanted to get involved is that your name was attached, and you're more interested in damage control for your brand than your brand's actual integrity. I feel like we wouldn't even be having this conversation if there was not another YouTuber in your space. I hope that you can be professional about this going forward, even though, frankly, you haven't been through this entire nightmare ordeal. But clearly, that is not possible.
Hey Rachel, to start things off, I replied to you on Twitter the way I did, out of frustration due to the misinformation you have about me and how you are talking about me without ever contacting me directly prior. I'd imagine you feel the same frustration if someone had incorrect info about you, and probably you do with how some people went after you in the past with false information. I truly don't want to engage in internet drama that operates off of gossip, but the amount of misinformation you have is staggering, so I will set the record straight. As far as you and me, I'm dumbfounded. We hung out and that was it. I'm not sure what you saw in hanging out with me, but we just went our separate ways. All in all, I feel blindsided by your emails, Rachel. How can you say that you come to me as an impartial individual? As far as Chris goes, I heard through second-hand sources of his stupid joke, that Chris made amends with you and that was the end of it. Only for me to get accusatory emails months later? You never reached out to me officially, so how could I acknowledge anything besides what... Finally, I do have a lawyer and I will gladly bring him into our conversation to clear the air if needed. Now that it has come to this degree of misinformation on your end, I will do everything within my power to clear the record for the truth, and that includes exploring legal avenues if necessary. I hope this information helps and convinces you to reconsider your position. Regards, Steven.
Steven, you've already passed the allotted time I've given you to deal with the situation privately, as outlined in my first email, which I feel is ridiculous considering you had access to this information for more than a year, regardless of where it came from. If you're now going to sit there and threaten me with legality after this many private attempts at communication, I will not be entering any further discussion with you after this last correspondence and cutting contact with you at this point. The reality is I'm incredibly uncomfortable with your general approach in which your previous email and how your public correspondence has been addressed, as well as you in general. So I'll keep this as brief as possible. To add to this whole "I will fight you for the truth" tone your whole last email and the Twitter thread is drenched with undermines the actual issues of the conversation, on top of assuming I'm going to publish falsifiable information. Is that how you talk to someone who's treated poorly by a current employee in the past? Based on all of your previous conversations, Forgive me if you're not on the top of my list of people who treat me with assumed respect. In regards to your response on my Twitter posting, your heated response calling me a liar and questioning my character publicly is unacceptable. How you were particularly feeling at the time doesn't justify calling people names and treating them poorly. As well, you could have DM'd me as requested several times or asked for further information before responding in such a tone. When all I ask regarding this exchange is for you to apologize publicly for something you did publicly, you instead doubled down in the last message and tried to justify your feelings, and only privately at that. This doesn't strike me as someone who's dealing with the situation with the utmost maturity, but a desperate attempt to distract from the actual issues and make yourself the victim. The fact that you're going about this route again, even after I proved I wasn't lying the first time, is fucking deranged. Regarding your access to the information about the incident regarding Chris, and your insistence that I was the one who directly discussed the information about Chris instead of your general access to said information seems to be misguided. Do I have to tell you directly what to do with an employee incident of this scale for anything to happen? I shared the confirmation I had from both and that you had said information, which came off as indifference based on what I felt, as well as your correspondence with DA Games alluding to such, as well as there being a public safety report available with public contact information present for over a year regarding the situation. So I don't understand how it's particularly relevant how you learned your employee sexually harassed someone in the past. It just matters that it happened. Even assuming you didn't know about Chris's actions up to the Twitter exchange, I still emailed you directly to discuss it before it reached this point, and you seemed to ignore that email and only responded to a second after my frustration became clearer. To be frank, it doesn't matter how the perpetrator feels how the resolution went, but the fact that it happened in the first place is unacceptable. Chris is, very obviously, going to tell you whatever you need to hear to keep his job. It's alright, guys, the criminal said the crime actually wasn't so bad after all. Hell, it doesn't even matter how I feel about it. Still, if you were so concerned with my personal opinion on the matter, to the point whether it would directly dictate your decision to keep Chris on staff or not, I do not, for the life of me, understand why you didn't reach out to me, directly or indirectly through our friends. Great job updating me on the current status of Chris's employment, even now, by the way. Good job. 10 out of 10. Regardless, this isn't a joke, and your insistence as such is the underlying problem of this whole situation. How is it a fucking joke to say you ejaculated on your boss's clothing and say that to other men multiple times? It cannot and should not be belittled as just drama. Why would I have gone through the trouble of corresponding with DA Games or having a safety report be written if I just thought it was just a joke? I was and am worried about the children Chris and the greater DA Games community still have access to. Even if I had forgiven Chris for some reason, it wouldn't be relevant. Even still, you seem to show anger that I got Chris's confession on record in comparison, what he actually confessed to, with your comment stating, "Are you gonna record the call without telling me the same way you did Chris?" To be clear, he is not the victim. Full stop. Neither are you, for that matter, Mr. Truth Seeker. Publicly throwing the actual recipient under the bus and siding with the sexual harasser just because he did not know he was going to be on record as a safety concern, on top of being incorrect about your information, is one of the most idiotic parts of this whole ordeal. I felt it was very obvious that the intention was a recording for the public record, and a possible angle interpretation of him being blindsided by a bad joke turned public because I want to be a bitch and cause problems is just insulting and disrespectful on so many levels. Or how you put it, publicly discussing half-truths to gain sympathy and slander your name. Spoiler alert, this isn't about you. Additionally, the fact that I went out of my way to privately talk to you directly after several attempts to seek resolution with the staff and wanted to ask on the Twitter thread and still did not receive a response until sending a second email outlining my frustration is just ridiculous. I then even provided additional proof of racism and Nazi imagery that Chris and Will displayed. There are even incidents of lolicon/child pornography and sharing that material with minors, allegedly accidentally on the document I linked, as well as Will dating a minor in 2015. If we only knew what Saberspark thought about lolicon. Oh wait.
As his following grew, Cal became very publicly outspoken with his dislike of lolicon and similar taboo art styles. For those who are not familiar with them, let's just say it's
This additional document has been publicly available for over 2 years. The DA Games community server has had pedophiles that were quietly kicked out if/when discovered, instead of publicly acknowledged. One has a motherfucking mugshot on the document. Since this all seems to have gone ignored until now, on top of the safety report of the incident being publicly available for over a year, solidifies to me my original assumption that you do only care when you have consequences for your lack of action. God forbid someone is a creep on my staff, just don't tell the public he works for me. Does it not seem like common sense to fire someone who talks this way about others, especially women, regardless of when it happened? In the interest of openness, though, I am open to do an on-the-record, three-way conversation between you and myself to get to the truth of the matter at a later time, but that will be at your discretion as his boss and at his comfort level. As I want to honor request to not be involved anymore and not emotionally distress him. But bluntly, I will not tolerate the consistent implications of untruthfulness until this happens. Can reach out in the future if he is interested and comfortable about a possible conversation. Lastly, as I don't want to get too personal, but it's absolutely laughable that you consider your romantic interest in me and our friendship ending as mutually parting ways. Like, what fucking planet are you on? Is that how you summarize every one of your failed courtships? Let me refresh you on the experience. After months of spending time together in person, and your insistence that we were just friends, your goal seemingly was instead to spend time with me and see if I would change my mind and be open to a romantic relationship. At that time, I felt like I'd finally had found a like-minded content creator and friend close and distant to me. I think I even said something along the lines of, "These feel like dates, I'm just making sure we're hanging out as friends, right?" After you grew distance, I felt manipulated and pressured to say I was open to dating in order to not lose that friendship. You then dated Gabe's sister over me and then asked about my dating availability immediately after that ended. I tried to play it off but was uncomfortable with the whole situation. I felt like I was only important to you if I was dateable, and a backup option at that. Would I have been treated the same way as a new potential friend if I was male identifying? This is the whole reason I went to your staff in the first place and not you directly. I felt objectified by my direct experiences towards you and did not wish to repeat said experiences for the sake of my own mental health. But you implied you needed the clarification, so there you go, buddy. At this point, I feel exacerbated with the favor I've given you and others, personally and professionally, so I'll be ending the conversation here. To remind you, I am not a third party in the situation trying to get cheap or easy views off a popular content creator. This is how Chris treated me behind my back. This is how he never owned up to those actions till I had to find out about them myself. This is how his behavior has continued. This is how the greater DA Games community could be potentially harmful to children. This is on top of Chris's misogynistic, anti-Semitic behavior that I stupidly forced myself to tolerate when he worked for me. And the fact that I have to sit here and fight and scream and kick for anyone to take this seriously is so emotionally draining, triggering, and insulting. This whole situation has been a nightmare, but I'm not going to sit here and let everyone else pretend it's just a joke out of public convenience. And I would bet good money that he's still on your payroll. I'm at a loss for words. Frankly, I do not have the patience or emotional bandwidth for your tone, your constant visualization, or to discuss this further with you at this point, for your own perceived direct benefit. To be blunt, you triggered the shit out of me, Steven, and I still tried multiple times to communicate with you, but ultimately was met with silence until now. You were screaming on Twitter like a child at me for months after trying to get any kind of internal word on Chris, and the information being in the public eye, and you still haven't fucking apologized for any of it. How do you think this makes me feel? On top of that, only then to even be taking it seriously because I might make a video and hurt other people's reputation really shows me how being affected by all this really matters in the long run to you. Sexual harassment, use of Nazi imagery, pedophilia, fine to sweep it under the rug, just don't bring it up on Twitter.
Ramesses, you bring this upon yourself.
Part whatever. Chris isn't the victim. Chris isn't the victim. I can't believe I have to even have this segment, but with the implication of Steven's "what are you gonna do, record me?" comment on top of Chris's statement talking about the recording being without his knowledge, let's just clear this up. So firstly, as already stated, I thought it was obvious that a call-up was being recorded for safety reasons, because it's about sexual harassment. It's not like a fun call. Like, I thought it was obvious. Obviously it wasn't. This isn't just someone calling me a bitch or something subliminally small. Like, this is someone using the fact that I am a girl as a way to negatively sexualize me to make themselves feel better. Should I have to say that's not okay? Additionally, this is someone I trusted enough to represent me at a convention. This isn't just some rando being a dick because he's mad at me for existing on the internet. I think that's why this sucks a little bit more.
Figures, because bitches love bringing up old stuff.
Something else to keep in mind is the loss of reputation, which is hard to recover from. How do the receivers of the story, knowing that it's false or not, going to feel about the person who the story is being told about? I didn't know this was happening, and I can't defend myself or my reputation if I'm not there. If it was a collaborator I was interested in working with at the time, He would definitely have negative feelings about working with me now. What happens if the story spreads or even becomes distorted through a game of telephone and changes depending on the teller? First impressions can last months or even years, and will psychologically affect personal treatment and ideals, even the fact of contrary evidence. See, the political landscape. This is not something Chris came to me about after it happening. We seemingly had a decent rapport up to this point. Chris could have admitted this happened years ago, and I would have still been pissed, but at least he would have owned up to it and maybe made a public apology, but instead, I had to hear it from a witness. It makes me feel like crap. It makes me feel like my personal comfort, safety, and privacy is less important than convenience or the bro code. At the same point, I want to analyze the implications of mistreatment. Like, if Chris really felt this way, I don't know why it didn't come up at that moment he was making those jokes, or after, or even when I confronted him. It came up on an apology statement as a vague reference. This is actual sexualized art, a sexualized story, buying me a Discord figure years ago. And he also made comments on my body when I did the ice bucket challenge. So, 3 sex things plus a potential romantic gesture. Chris maybe have been bitter because I didn't reciprocate romantic feelings or something. Turns out editing for free isn't a winning strategy for dating KP.
And then things got worse.
Hi, I'm Courtney. You may know me as Pete or Orchard, but honestly, call me what you like. KP reached out to me a few weeks ago, asking me to cover the Gabe story in more detail, as she was busy working on this video here, and I unfortunately have a fair share of experience with recognizing online grooming, and am pretty unashamed in speaking out loudly against it. Gabriel C. Brown, also known as Black Griffin Online, has had growing speculations and concerns regarding his relationship with his now wife and voice actress of Sweetie Belle on My Little Pony. From most accounts, it looks as if Gabe had groomed his now wife from the time she was 14 until she pursued him herself at the age of 20. After their announced engagement and subsequent marriage, Gabe faced growing accusations online of grooming his wife. He dismissed the accusations under the guise that he had not known her prior to her being 20, and any interactions they did have while she was a minor were strictly professional and in convention spaces only. A Google document has since been created compiling evidence from Gabe and his wife's own Twitter and YouTube accounts proving these dismissals to be false, as well as proving multiple other instances of Gabe showcasing problematic behavior. I've covered the topic in a little more depth in an hour-long video on my channel, which will no doubt be linked in the description below. Anyway, I'm sprinkled throughout this video a few times, so I shall see you all in my next segment.
I became a fan of Saberspark when I was in high school when I found his essay titled Ballad of the Brony in 2011. After graduating and turning 18, I added him on Skype to tell him I was a big fan of his. He added me back almost instantly, and we had a conversation ending with him giving me his phone number, which was a really big deal to me at the time since this was the first time interacting with any sort of celebrity. I had developed a parasocial crush on him due to being starstruck, which was something he was aware of. We would talk on Skype and text each other semi-frequently leading up to the first time meeting him. In 2012, I went to my first pony convention. This was my first time ever traveling by myself and was soon after the two of us became friends. When I met up with him in person, he invited me to his hotel room and he showed me the video he was editing on his laptop, causing me to internally geek out. I was really nervous being alone in a hotel with someone I was a huge fan of and had a crush on, but I tried to play it cool. He was 4 to 5 years older than me, making me feel more nervous and out of place. He would bring up the prospects of the two of us dating and how it didn't feel right for us to do so. After that, he almost immediately initiated making out with me and guided me to his bed. In this moment, he did not directly ask me for consent. I was thrown onto his bed and he would insert himself into me. Saberspark was also significantly larger than me, as I was an 80-something pound 18-year-old girl, so I physically could not stop him. I felt extremely nervous and uncomfortable because I had never experienced having any sort of sexual intimacy with someone I was not dating before, much less someone I just met. I was very new to meeting people online in general. At that moment, I laid there dissociating as I felt very wrong while trying to rationalize it in my head to convince myself it was a safe and normal encounter. He rushed off to clean and finish himself and came back to the bed and offered me a handshake saying, "Friends?" This would cause me for the rest of the event to feel that I was taken advantage of and ashamed of myself for not trying to stop the interaction. Though I tried pretending I was fine to everyone around me, I was, and still am, demisexual, and being put in that position was not something I wanted. I maintained the friendship until a second occurrence happening at a completely different PonyCon in 2013. This time we met in a public space, but had no one around and talked for a while. He kept bringing up the prospects of us starting a relationship, but how it felt wrong. He would grab my hand saying how it felt so right, only to push my hand away saying, but so wrong. I had decided that my crush on him was something I needed to get over because I felt that my emotions were being toyed with. He then suggested going to a more public space around others, and we went into the elevator to go up to the lobby of the PonyCon Hotel. As soon as the door closed, Saberspark forcefully shoved me against the wall and shoved his tongue down my throat. It scared me and actually hurt, triggering another attack of dissociation. Once again, he did not ask for consent when throwing me into this situation. Once the doors opened and people were present, this led me to feel very embarrassed. He got off me and took my hand and guided me towards the stairs to go back down to where we just were and into a men's restroom where he pulled his pants down and guided my hands and head to perform oral sex on him. I was afraid of denying him because of past experiences with sexual assault, so I did it to get it over with without wanting to cause a problem. Where he would ejaculate on my face, apologize profusely, and then offer the same handshake as he did at the con I initially met him, saying, "Friends?" Despite pretending I was fine, I had slowly begun pulling away from Saberspark. I cried that night while staying with a friend, but waited for that friend to fall asleep, so no one could hear me, and I would cry for months, feeling ashamed of myself for putting myself in a compromising situation with someone I hardly knew. I had always felt taken advantage of by him, and tried being friendly and pretending nothing was wrong because it was all I knew how to do. I would blame myself for the interactions for years, only opening up to a few close people, questioning if consent was implied because of my crush, and unwillingness and fear to outright stop the advances because of how uncomfortable I felt. I understand that there is a possibility that he felt consent was implied because he knew I had a crush on him. However, he did not once ask for consent directly and was instead thrown into these sexual encounters, usually very suddenly. There were no discussions about the power dynamic between us as a popular content creator and a fan at any time. And my parasocial connection to him and not wanting someone I was a fan of to hate me if I rejected him, leaving me afraid to stop his advances. Over time, I grew increasingly distant and would eventually end contact completely. I don't feel safe enough to fully come forward because I don't want his fans and friends or even him to harass or contact me publicly. I wish to stay anonymous so I can avoid the anxiety and stress of being targeted by either him, his friends, and especially his fans. As Saberspark has over 2 million subscribers, and even sharing my story at all has me feeling really afraid. I have seen other instances of Saberspark using his enormous platform to confront people online he has had conflict with. I have also witnessed several instances of his friends attempting to justify him and others' actions. I was not made aware of his jokes about consent and his recent behavior involving Chris until only recently, and it left my stomach in knots. I please ask above all else for my privacy to be respected. I don't wish to publicly defend my personal experience and just wish to share my experience.
So welcome to the video where we break this down a little bit more and talk about what is consent, because yeah, it's an important discussion here. So because this is a really serious conversation and I know almost nothing about sexual assault, I invited Courtney, again, she's all over this video, to talk about like what is consent and when consent is there and when it's not there. We're having a great time here at the worst video ever, and just kind of break it down so we have a better understanding, and all you nerds out there, don't do something really, really bad like this. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Hi again, Courtney. Welcome. You'll be in the video everywhere at this point.
Hello, everybody. It is I. I have returned once again. So happy to be here.
So I've shown you the testimony at this point. What are your general vibes on it besides icky and sad? And I don't know, this is just like super triggering to me because yeah, so I thought I'd also bring you in here to hold my hand during this. But yeah,
in terms of the testimony, it's just kind of heartbreaking, really. It's always heartbreaking to me when people question their own sexual assault just because of the lack of education around it. And like, something that I just want to say to anybody out there is, a consensual sexual encounter is never something you're going to question afterwards. Okay? Like, you just don't question a consensual encounter. Sure, you may have a consensual encounter that's unsatisfying. You may have one that you regret, you may look back on one and go, if I could make that decision again, I probably wouldn't. But people don't question consensual sexual experiences with, did I just get violated? To be quite honest. And like, the other thing that kind of breaks my heart is there's one point in her testimony where she questions, if I'm remembering this correctly, that like maybe she was at fault because she had a crush on him, like maybe she gave the wrong signal or something, maybe she implied something, or he thought consent was implied because he knew there was a crush on her. Like, in all honesty, consent is never implied. Like, even secure, confident individuals in a sexual encounter will check in with their partner as things escalate and change gears, and they'll say things like, are you okay? Should we keep going? Is this good? Like, because consent is not something that is implied. It's never something that's implied. It's not, an absence of a no is not a yes in any regard. An absence of resistance is not compliance. And even in that regard, compliance is not an invitation.
Mm-hmm. Because this girl had a crush on Saber, it was okay that he just kind of initiated things. And then especially, too, in the elevator, in a public space, when he's just much larger than her, like, physically. I don't know, it's all icky, but like, what would you define consent as, and when would you define, like, obviously this isn't it for sure, but go ahead.
And in terms of like a definition of consent and what it is and what it isn't, consent is an excited yes. Consent is exuberant, what's the word I'm looking for? Payback, for lack of a better term, I guess. Like, two people in a consensual encounter engage in a give and take. Like, it's never just one person doing all of the action and the other person just laying there like a bump on a log. It's an action that two people engage in when it's consensual. 9 times out of 10, when it's one person just using another person's body for sexual gratification, that's not a consensual encounter. That is just a violation of somebody's person. And it's actually pretty common for like sexual aggressors to attack somebody like in a innocuous sort of sense, like in the elevator, especially at like a convention or something like that in public, because it sort of dissuades the target or the victim from actually saying anything. Because, like, half the time people will think, well, this is being done in public, surely somebody's going to say something, so I don't have to. But the other part of them doesn't want to cause a scene and be embarrassed, because they're already embarrassed by the fact that they're being attacked, the fact that PDA in general is seen as, like, a sort of cringy, embarrassing thing. And, like, they don't want to draw more attention to themselves, especially while they're dealing with the fact that they're being attacked. And part of them just hopes that somebody's going to do it anyway, like step in and say something anyway. And the problem with the general public is they sort of fall into the someone else will deal with it mentality, whereas everybody sort of assumes that somebody else is going to step in and say something, so they therefore then won't.
Well, the other thing I wanted to throw in there, too, is nothing that's illegal, but kind of the parasocial relationship of, like, it's always... It seems like it's a common thing where, like, back in the day, rock stars would sleep with their groupies kind of thing, but now it's kind of more discussed that that's a paradynamic that shouldn't really be abused, and especially when you don't really know someone in person, you know, like, from the testimony, this is her first time in person with Saber. And he immediately jumps, not immediately, but he pretty much immediately jumps on her. So that also kind of gave me a big ick. Any thoughts on that?
And one other thing I wanted to add in is that, you know, confident individuals in a sexual encounter don't have to assume that consent is there, because they will ask. And to be honest, the only time you're not asking or checking for consent is because you know yourself that the yes is not there. And you don't want to hear the no, so you will not ask. Okay? Because if you think consent is complied, and you think the person that is, you know, on the other end of it is actively participating, if you know the answer is going to be yes, then what do you have to lose by just asking? And being a responsible individual when it comes to sexual practice and just asking. And the difference between, like, rock stars sleeping with groupies comes down to, like, literally consent. Like, there's a big difference between, you know, the chick who's going to see the rock star perform and, like, flashing her titties while he's performing, and then going and flashing her titties to the bouncer to get backstage, and then flashing her titties in the rock star's face, probably making out with him a bit of her own volition, and one of them saying, hey, let's go back and sleep in the van. Like, there are multiple instances where consent is very, very clearly given by the groupie sleeping with the rock star. And, like, yeah, there may be a certain power dynamic, and, like, there absolutely is multiple instances of rock stars abusing that to be like, hey, well, I'm famous, show me your titties. But there's a big difference between going, hey, I'm famous, show me your titties, and someone going, I'm showing you my titties because I want to sleep with you. Right? Like, just the act of, like, basically showing you my titties is in most circumstances an invitation to touch my body, okay? In no way is I'm a big fan of yours an invitation to touch somebody's body. And I also find it really, really weird that this dude meets a fan, gets the inkling she has a crush on him, so he invites her back to his hotel room. Okay, like, getting invited back to the hotel room has sexual connotations, and the fact that she didn't realize that just shows how naive she was, and the fact that none of that was communicated. Because clearly, he knew what he was inviting her back to the hotel room for, but she didn't. And that just gives me, like, the major ick, to be quite honest, because, like, it's really as if Saber is acting like he's Gene Simmons inviting you back to, you know, the hotel room, when in reality he's a pudgy brony YouTuber showing you his animations before he shows you his dick. Like, that's not the same thing at all.
Like, do you think there is some kind of weird parasocial dynamic too, that she felt uncomfortable, you know, advocating for herself because, like, oh, this is the real Saberspark TM, like, I don't want to feel like, you know, he might say something on Twitter, you know, blast me publicly. Like, is there pressure, just generally speaking, when celebrities, you know, have those kind of encounters with fans, I guess?
Of course she would have felt uncomfortable advocating for herself. Like, most fans don't get to meet their idol in person. So meeting your idol in person is already a very, like, exalted sort of status. Like, that's something most fans dream of but never actually get to. So once you put a fan in the situation where they're meeting their idol in person, something they probably never thought would happen but always dreamed would happen, no fan is going to do something that's going to jeopardize that, and that includes offending their idol. And, like, the idol knows that, and for, like, say, like, anybody to sit there and be like, well, you know, what if so-and-so wasn't aware of the power dynamic? Like, they always know. You can always tell, you can always feel it. You can tell when somebody is fangirling. And to, like, for someone who's going to sit there and prey on that and be like, well, I know you're not going to say no to me, or at least give me a hard boundary that could possibly offend me, so I'm going to exploit that by asking things of you that I know you wouldn't say yes to in any other situation. And, like, to be quite honest, no fan is going to do anything. Most fans are not going to do anything other than fall into line with that. Because again, they're getting to an exalted status of getting to meet their idol in person. You know, they've been a fan of this person, they've done art for this person, they've dreamed of meeting this person. They're not going to jeopardize that by offending that person by saying no.
Mm-hmm. And not that those relationships can't happen, but it's very tricky water as far as, you know, establishing and acknowledging the power dynamic and discussing it before, like, even anything were to happen. But I don't know, my whole MO has never really been to go date your fans, because, you know, it, like, your fans are not a dating pool. They're just, you know, they're there to consume your content. I don't know, it just ick. It's not technically illegal, but it just kind of ick to me.
And in terms of dating your fans, like, I don't know, I just kind of miss the days where it was considered just not kosher to date from your fan base. Like, that was considered poor form. Because, like, your fans aren't your peers. And I always question why, like, when somebody can't pull from their peers, like, why is it that you can't, like, land somebody and date somebody who's, like, on an even playing field with you? Why does there have to be a power imbalance? And that's always, like, the trend with these types. Like, if you look at, like, most of their relationships, there's always a power imbalance. And if you have a track record of having a power imbalance in your relationships, what is wrong with you? Like, why do you need to have a one-up on somebody in order to be in a relationship with them? Like, you need therapy.
Yeah, it's so fun here. I think that's it, Courtney, unless you have anything else to add. Like, anything else you want to add that you remember from the testimony that you want to comment on?
If you question if it's a violation, it probably was. If you feel violated, that was not consent. Your feelings matter. Your feelings are valid. Consent is never implied. Real men who get bitches ask for consent. I guess that's it.
What a good way to end the video. Not end the video, end the segment. What a good way to end the segment. Part 5, why make this video? Unfortunately, this is insight about how content creators can respond to situations of sexual harassment and more damning incidents. It's important to talk about how this stuff isn't okay. And it's not something to make jokes out of. I personally shouldn't have to be sexualized or belittled because someone didn't get what they wanted, and in a professional setting. The story and the other incidents are taken to an extreme. I should not have to fight with people to get justice for something like this, or for other victims. And especially on receiving responses when there only might be repercussions on the line. It's messed up, and I'm hoping this can be a learning experience for anyone who has ever made a nasty meme or taken something too far. Admitting it and apologizing without being prompted can go a long way, and thinking about possible consequences should be as well. Chris didn't just make up a bad story, he did some other unsavory stuff. Combined with the lack of action when a groomer is in the DA game space, when there are children in there, is unacceptable. There is nothing bad or off-brand about kicking a pedophile out of your community and letting other adjacent communities know. It also seems to me that many popular content creators don't know or frankly don't care about keeping their communities safe when it comes to problematic behavior. There will be confrontation involved, so if you don't like confrontation, maybe think twice about being a content creator. If you don't want so much responsibility, then consider making public spaces 18+. But even then, there still might be creeps. So I made a quick little guide. KP's guide to dealing with bad people in your community. Number 1. Listen to someone if they have a serious concern, and make sure they have screenshots if possible. And if you're too busy, get a mod team to help you with this. Number 2. If the screenshots are damning enough, skip step 3 and remove them from your space. Number 3. If there are no screenshots, confront the person with the issue stated and get their side of the story. Have others weigh in on the decision if it's a hard one. Number 4. Make a Google Doc with problematic or unsafe behavior so it can be shared with other communities and this person can't prey on another fan group. Number 5. Look out for name changes and general suspicious behavior, especially in fandom communities. All in all, these people seem to be unsafe around children because they don't seem to care about holding anyone accountable. And Saber probably didn't think all this through because he didn't think it was going to be public. Oops. Hashtag sorry not sorry. Part 6. Shitting on Lily Orchard because it's fun. So welcome to the Lily section for the people who only care about her and not any of the other stuff. Fun fact, Lily just rebranded herself as CD Callout because it's totally about not escaping all the pedophilia and abuse claims and just making people happy with her sunshiny content, because her content's always just so positive and great, and Jesus fucking Christ, she's not fucking fooling anyone.
You a rotten liar.
KP wanted to talk to Sketchy about all these accusations made against me, and then show screenshots that made it very obvious that she's lying. Sketchy says rather plainly, I am not comfortable discussing my friends when they're not around, to which KP offers adding a third party, whose relation to the case she has yet to disclose. But she is unfortunately missing the point. Sketchy did not want to have this conversation while I wasn't present, so the third party had to be me.
So Sketchy stuff was generally taken out of context. In the screenshot I'm showing you, Sketchy basically said he wasn't open to the conversation, even though I offered if a third party was present, and he still said no. The third party was implied to be Lily herself, so it didn't seem to me that he was open to the conversation regardless if Lily was there or not. If he was open to the conversation when Lily was there, then he should have clarified that with communication. And I'm still open to have that conversation even now, so let's go, bro.
Your move, Chief.
The other thing in the first screenshot is that he just assumes I'm projecting. That's a weird thing to say for someone I don't really talk to that often. I don't want to speculate on private conversations with Lily, but am I wrong to say that's a little sussy? It seems obvious to me that Lily talked to him before I confronted him, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to sit here and speculate that. Oh, fun fact, Sketchy is also a not safe for work furry artist, which, fine, you live your best life, Sketchy, but you know what? I don't think furries are really into the whole pedophilia scene. So you know it'd be great? If all the furries spread the word and said not to commission this guy because he's friends with a pedophile.
We're an angry mob. What are we? We're an angry mob.
Let's talk about the recording confrontation. So generally what happened during the segment is Lily kind of manipulated what I said and miscommunicated some things, so I'm here to clarify because, fuck Lily, who cares? So number one, Lily totally skips the part of the confrontation where she lies about Stockholm.
So I was really fucking pissed off at the fact that FimFiction just basically just kind of let anything go in regards to content and just hosted a shitload of child porn. So I wrote a book where basically a fic where a bunch of pedophiles just get shot in the head, and then Bronies got really mad about it and started lying about its contents.
That's a weird thing to leave out for someone who wants to tell the truth.
Isn't that convenient?
KP, people have made worse accusations about you.
Yeah, because allegedly treating your employees poorly is totally worse than raping your own little sister.
She needs to sort out her priorities.
KP decides my denying of the accusations carries less weight than her making them because she just decided that was the case.
I never accused anyone of lying, and Lily just was like, I don't want you talking to Courtney.
So, as a favor to you, if I reached out to Courtney and got her to apologize for the trans
No, I do not want you to reach out to Courtney at all.
Just seems like a weird thing to say if you have nothing to hide. Her whole reaction to me just asking about it was so defensive.
It's just a question. No need to get so defensive.
And where have they said worse things about me? I want you to cite your sources.
Never mind that when you don't have a significant social media presence, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by doing it.
Yeah, because I'm going to come out of total obscurity to accuse someone of rape for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Makes sense.
Do you even hear yourself?
Never mind that this is literally policy in some states.
The fuck? What even? You're not even American, you stupid girl. Girl, can you not? I want to kiss your face with a hammer.
She then decided to offer to mediate a call between me and Courtney, and are you fucking kidding me? Oh boy. Yeah, I would love it if the Queen of the Lollipop Guild organized a call between me and my abuser like we're on an episode of fucking Smiling Friends, just because she's a gullible shit with all the political awareness of a drunk sparrow in a rave.
The fuck? How is this political? Why a sparrow? Is that like a metaphor for something you made up in your head?
That is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Some people were surprised at how abruptly I ended the call. When KP said she wasn't comfortable with the accusations made against me, I just said, alright, bye, and left and blocked her on everything. Simple reason for that, I don't want to be friends with anyone who believes any of this garbage, and that's something I'm entitled to do.
Yeah, sure, I never said you can't do that, it's just a little defensive and weird.
I didn't yell, I didn't scream, I didn't call her any names, I just said bye and left.
Girl, you called her a bunch of names in this video and demeaned her intelligence. Actually, bye.
Okay, I'm out. Can't do this anymore. Need to go home.
I never said I believed in the accusations, just that they made me uncomfortable, and wanted to ask Lily about them. Is that not communicating? Lily, you always hemmed and hollered about, oh, no one ever communicates with me. They never set boundaries, and then they just leave when I make them uncomfortable. I just wish people would communicate and tell me when they're uncomfortable so we can find solutions together.
You're such a hypocrite.
Because I'm communicating that I'm uncomfortable, suddenly I'm a gullible shit. Gee, I wonder why your friends don't feel like they can communicate with you.
You can go back over the podcast we did talking about personal trauma, where I bring up most of the stuff, and she's just kind of disinterested in anything that isn't about her. We just kind of accepted that. I mean, it's not that KP was a shitty friend, it's just that she was just kind of there, and it was something that made cutting the thread upon KP, crossing my strictest boundaries, easier to do.
Let's talk about how I didn't want to interrupt someone who's talking about their trauma. Michaela also had to push me to communicate with Lily, and Lily actively flirting with me was a little uncomfy, especially live.
Like, literally everyone, fuck you. KP is an absolutely lovely person.
Yay! I'm gonna slowly. I've made this joke like privately, but like I'm slowly gonna acquire a lesbian army and take over the world. Just give it time. Anyway,
that is the most aggressive polycule ever.
Lily clearly never ever wanted to fuck me, never ever, and I never ever had a reason to not want to open up to her. And she seems to think that's some kind of personal slight against her, that I never warmed up to her in the way she wanted me to. Then I learned about how she raped her sister, and about Stockholm, and the dog fucking, and you fucking wonder where I'm like, yeah, maybe Lily Orchard isn't like the best person.
Well, I'll stay away from her then.
This isn't even to call KP a bad person for being an aloof, self-centered weirdo who's always disassociating.
Lily, you're being ableist. Just because you also have PTSD doesn't mean it's cool to say that I'm odd in the head.
It's just that all that stuff made me realize I wasn't really going to miss her.
Oh no, the incestuous pedophile rapist doesn't want me in her polycule anymore? Whatever shall I do?
Stop, don't come back.
In general, you should always be extremely suspicious of any accuser who tries to convince you not to listen to the accused response.
But that's what you did, Lily, that's what you did. Oh, P.S. on the Britney section, Lily cropped out a lot of Britney's talking points to sound like she was talking to herself. So go check Britney's logs and report back. That's your homework, unless you're stupid enough to believe Lily on her word, which, can't really help you there. And also, she cut out all the dog fucking pictures in the patch section, so,
When we started school at like 5 or 6. Lily started at 5. I started at 6, and we always got the bus up at the top entrance of the trailer park where there was the store. Now the trailer park used to be gated for whatever reason, and the stone walls that held the gates are still in place. I'm pretty sure they might even still be there to this day, but they were when we were growing up. And people used to just stick their chewed gum to it to discard their gum.
Yeah.
And while we were waiting for the bus up by that store, Lily made a habit, starting at like 7 years old, of like peeling the gum off of this wall and eating it. Not like chewing it, just like swallowing it, just eating it.
It reminds me of that scene in Elf where he's just going around New York City and he's just like picking the gum off the sidewalks.
Exactly. And it was so funny because I'd see her doing it, and then of course being 6 years old and that being disgusting, I'd go rat her out to her mother, and her mother would come over and start screaming at her to drop the gum, and like a dog with something it's not supposed to eat, Lily would just start shoving it into her mouth faster.
Did she ever get sick, like, from this? Because this is, ew. Like, who knows who's putting the gum there?
I've been asked that before, but surprisingly, I don't think she ever did. Like, she wasn't sick a lot as a kid. Other than, like, the scarlet fever and the chicken pox, she really didn't actually get sick that much. Neither of us really did. But no, she just, like, and it was such a problem that, like, we switched bus stops. Because she wouldn't stop eating the gum.
So what was the reason that, like, she was even just out of, like, boredom or something? Or, like, she found the gum and she's like, ooh, that's colorful, I'm gonna put it in my mouth. That's what she said.
I mean, if she was really that, like, mentally incapacitated at 7, maybe that was the mindset. I really couldn't tell you what brings one to see gum crammed into a stone wall that makes you think, I should put that in my mouth. and then you go through the effort of prying it off with all the little stones that are in it, and you just go, yes, in my mouth it goes.
I mean, like, you made a good point that even when you were younger, you kind of knew that was a little off, so it's not like she, was just being a dumb kid. I mean, I guess to some extent, but, like,
I think
at the same time, like...
Because for Lily, like, negative attention was still attention. And getting yelled at by her parents was attention, so whatever made that happen was a good thing. And, like, someone might suggest in the comments of this video that, like, maybe Lily had pica. No, she didn't, because she didn't eat weird things. Like, she didn't, like, pick off the drywall and eat it, or eat stones. No, it was just already chewed gum.
What is pica?
It's like I think it's classified as a disorder, but it's a phenomenon where people will start eating things that are not food items, and typically it's because of, like, a mineral deficiency or something. I think there's also links to, like, psychological issues, but a lot of the times it's your body is seeking some sort of vitamin or mineral, and then you end up somehow getting that from eating non-food items. Usually it, like, happens in terms of, like, stone. Like, you'll find people eating rocks, and it turns out that they have, like, a calcium or something deficiency.
Like, so how long did this go on for? Like, a year or two?
No, it was a good couple of weeks, because, like, our mom was on her every time. It got to the point where when we would go walk to the bus stop in the morning, she would be like, now, Lily, don't eat the fucking gum off the wall. Like, just sit there and lecture her. And then, like, I don't know, like a handicapped toddler, she got off the leash and then would go straight for the gum.
I like how there's already fan art of her, like, looking like a little golem eating the gum. We need more fan art of this.
I mean, she kind of was like a little goblin, because, like, it got to the point, I mean, it happened enough times that the other kids at the bus stop would just kind of, like, hang off, like, a little bit of ways from the wall and just sort of watch her do it. So she literally would be, like, crouched on top of this wall just with an audience, just prying up this gum, and then yum, 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 yum.
Oh, that's nasty.
And it was never, like, the same energy of when she chewed my Barbie shoes, because she always had this habit of chewing up the shoes of my Barbies. Never their feet, but just the shoes, which, honestly, I just chalked up to, well, she's like ADHD and autistic. She chews on shit. Of course she chewed on the plastic shoes. It pissed me off, but whatever. But it was never the same energy, because, like, it was only that wall.
Oh, like, yeah, it must have been for attention, like, which doesn't make it not gross, but, like, don't do that, guys.